A short while ago, I was contacted to evaluate a weather station, and I thought that might be a really good tool for gardeners, so I decided to go ahead with it. Here's the weather station I'm going to be reviewing in this video. I'm going to split this video into 3 parts. In part 1, we'll have a look at the basic system and see how it works. In part 2, we'll have a look at the data recorder. And then in part 3, I'm going to discuss how gardeners can use a device like this. Is this something every gardener should have? This is the Sainlogic WiFi weather station. This is the main unit, and it goes outside, measures wind speed, temperature, humidity. There's a little container here to collect the rain, so it measures how much it rains, wind direction. Solar panel here powers the unit, and there's a set of batteries in here as backup, so when the sun doesn't shine, it's still running. And it comes with a handy stem to help you mount the thing. The main body seems quite sturdy and is made from fairly good plastic. These are a little flimsy, and I'd be a little afraid of breaking these off, but I guess they have to be light so that the wind moves them. This is the trap for the rain, and this comes off so it can be cleaned. Essentially, this collects rain, goes down the funnel, and into a little cup here. And when the cup is full, it flips it and empties it. So the weather station is really measuring how many cups of water there are. But that's not a cup unit the way you use in the kitchen. These are tiny little cups in here. It actually looks like a fairly well-built system. Now for mounting it, you use this bar, slide it in the head unit, and then you need to mount it somewhere. And you get a number of these mounting units. You can mount this sideways on the side of a fence post and then put the unit on top. Or you can mount this flat and then put the unit on top. This unit has Wi-Fi capabilities, so it sends signals every 6 seconds to the receiver. So this goes outside, and you keep the receiver inside for monitoring the weather. This is the receiver here. I'll have a closer look at it in a second. It also has 3 batteries in here which power this, or you can plug it into the wall with a little transformer. There's a little bracket at the back here so you can stand it on a desk. And there's some mounting holes so you could mount it flush on a wall. The information that's displayed here is updated every 6 seconds from the unit doing the measurements outside. Now let's have a closer look at the receiver. This is a small panel that you would keep inside the house so you can see what all the values are of your weather station. There are 3 buttons along the top, a max-min button, a snooze button, and a channel button. There are 2 buttons along the right side, a set button and an alarm button. And then of course we have the display. The information is in nice bright large letters, numbers, so it's easy to see. Here we have the date, the time, the day of the week, the direction that the wind is coming, the gust speed, the average wind speed, the amount of rainfall that's occurred, barometric pressure. This is a display to tell you what the weather forecast is. So tomorrow it's going to be sunny. This predicts the weather 12 to 24 hours ahead of schedule. And over here we have temperatures. So the outside temperature, outside relative humidity, and the same values for inside. And this flashing light here is really important. This is showing that there is Wi-Fi connection with the weather station outside. The display is quite nice, and I like the fact that all of the digits are nice and large. But the display does have a few issues. One is these buttons at the top. Every time you go to pick up this unit, you tend to press one of these buttons. I guess if you wall mount this, you won't be touching those buttons. But if you have it laying down on a table or up on this little stand, and you want to pick it up, I can't help myself but to press those buttons. They're really in the wrong spot. The programming seems to be quite extensive. I mean, you can set all kinds of things here. You can set the units you want to use for temperature and the units for measuring rain. So you can do that in inches or millimeters. So those things are all controllable. You can also control the duration that you're measuring the rain. So we can do hours, 24 hours, a week, or a total value. But I do have a bit of a problem with the way in which you actually do the programming. And really the biggest problem is the fact that the manual is really poorly done. It talks about modes. We have a search mode, rest mode, snooze mode, set mode, min-max mode, quick display mode. and not one of those modes are described. You don't know what they are. It just keeps telling you to use those modes. The actual instructions for changing them are also kind of cryptic and hard to follow. You're almost better off ignoring the manual, just sitting down with the unit and start pressing buttons. So I'm going to walk you through some of this so you get a feel of what you can do and how you'll go about doing it. So the first one is this center one. This is the snooze light. If I press it, the display goes black. I currently have the unit plugged into the wall. And if you do that, the display stays on constantly. It doesn't turn off. If I unplug it from the wall, then the backup batteries take over and it will display for a few seconds and then turn itself off. When I hit snooze again, I get the display in the low light level. If I press it again, it's a little brighter, and press it again, brighter still. And the brightness here is really quite good. Now let's say I want to change the rain display. Rather than measuring 24 hours, I want to measure it over a week period. I come over to the side here and press the set button. That goes into an edit type mode, and I can set the date and time and day of the week. If I press it again, now you see this flashing, and I can set the rain value. To actually change that value, I'll have to hit min-max, and that cycles through 1 hour, total, month, and if I keep pressing it, just keeps cycling through until I get to the one I want. So if I want to measure the amount of rain over a week, then I would leave it here, go back over to the set button, and press the set button. Now it automatically goes to the next one, and if I don't want to change that one, I just keep pressing this until I come out of the set mode, or I could just press the snooze. The snooze also takes me out of the programming mode. So now I've changed my display so that instead of the rain for every 24 hours, I'm going to see the rain for a week. Now you might have noticed that there's also a value for total rain, and I have no idea what that is. It's simply not explained in the manual. Now my understanding is that if I have it set for a week, what this will do is it will measure the rain for a week and display that. But it's not clear whether it's a full week always or whether it resets itself at a certain time. So let me give you an example. Let's say I set this on Sunday at noon. On Monday, one day later, is it showing me the accumulation for one day or the last 7 days? That's also not clear. My understanding is that it's going to show me for one day, and it's going to accumulate this value for a period of a week, and at the end of the week it resets itself. Now I can come in and change all of the other units as well, but as you notice, if you use the set button, I wasn't able to change the temperature here. If you want to change the units for temperature, you have to come over here to set and hold it down for 3 seconds, and that takes you into a new mode. And then now I can set other variables on the display. So now I'm at the units for temperature. Hitting min-max will change that to Fahrenheit. Now if that's the only change I want to make, I can hit snooze and I get out, and now I'm displaying Fahrenheit. Once you've figured out how the buttons work, it's actually fairly easy to change. It's just really difficult to try and figure it out by reading the manual, unfortunately. With the display in this mode, which is sort of the standard mode, I can also hit min-max, and what it will do after one press is show me the maximum value for all of these. So the maximum temperature here was 79.2, and if I press it again, it'll show me the minimum value, but I'm not sure what the duration of that is. So this is a high and low temperature. Is this for the last 12 hours, the last 24 hours? I'm not really sure. If I hit it again, I go back to the standard mode. Now to see these values, you can use this display, or you can also use an app that's available. I think this is pretty nice, and if I want to measure the weather outside, it will work quite well. I think the limitation of it is that I can't see historical data. So right now it's spring for me. I'm wondering, what was March like last year? And how does that relate to this year? Is it colder this year? Is it warmer last year? When should I start my new vegetables? And I can't see that data unless I come along here periodically and write these numbers down. That's a quick introduction to the Sainlogic weather station. Now, how would gardeners use this tool? We don't care too much about things like wind speed and wind direction, or humidity for that matter. But we do care about temperature and rainfall. So let's have a look at temperature first. What I really want to know is, what is the minimum temperature? particularly in the spring and fall when I'm moving plants in and out. What was the cold temperature last night? Could it have affected my plants? And what is the minimum for the last several days? Is it going to be warm enough tonight so I can put my plants outside? That's a useful value to a gardener. I can get some of that information from the system. I mean, I can get the minimum temperature during the last 24 hours, but I can't see the minimum temperature for the last 3 days. You can only get it for the last 24-hour period. The max temperatures, they don't really tell me very much. They might help a little bit in the vegetable garden. Most plants stop producing flowers when the temperature gets too high. So your tomatoes, for instance, if it gets too hot, they stop making flowers and therefore they stop making fruit. So you might be wondering, well, why are my tomatoes not producing? It'd be really nice to go somewhere and see the temperature, the maximum temperature for the last couple weeks, and see maybe that's the reason. Again, you really can't do that with this unit because it doesn't record any temperature over time. You can only see the last maximum value. The alternative is for you to get in the habit of looking at it every day and recording those numbers so you have them in case you might need them. There's another thing to consider about temperature. Remember, we're going to take this unit and we're going to probably put it up high somewhere so it can catch the wind. But I want to know, what is the temperature where my plants are? They're not up on top of a railing or on top of a fence. My plants are at ground level. In fact, the coldest temperature is quite close to the ground level because that cold air settles. This doesn't provide a means to have an external thermocouple to go down to ground level. So here we're measuring the temperature up here, not where the plants are. Now that's usually not a big difference and we don't really care most of the time. But if we're trying to measure the minimum temperature that the plants experience overnight, we got to measure it right where the plants are. Now humidity can be useful, but we usually only care about humidity inside. How does that affect our house plant? We don't really care about humidity outside for the most part. And this device is really only measuring it outside unless you bring it inside and measure it there. And I did do that over the last couple of weeks and it does work. So my internal humidity here is about 40%. What about rain? That's really important. What I'd like to know is how much rain did we have over the last week? Now that's kind of a rough gauge, but if we get a couple inches of rain every week, I know that I don't have to water. So it's handy to know how much rain did I get in the last week. Now I can set that. So I can set up the unit to total up the rain for a whole week's period, and that's a good thing. But there is a catch. Let me walk you through an example and then you'll understand what it is. So let's say I come along at noon on Sunday and I set up the unit and I set it to measure for a week. Now Monday comes along and I look at it around noon and it will give me the total rainfall for one day. It doesn't give me the rainfall for the last week. It gives me the rainfall for one day. On Tuesday I look at it and it's the rainfall for 2 days and 3 days and so on. If I get up the following Sunday morning and look at it, I will finally get the rainfall in the last week. But if I forget to look and I come around after lunch, I have the rainfall for only an hour. So I've missed the data. And to me, this is really one of the biggest problems with this unit. It doesn't record data. I want to see what the rainfall is every day and I want it recorded. I want to be able to go to some sort of a screen or computer, even my phone, and say, what is the rain over the last period of time? Now, Sainlogic is coming out with a new unit that will track that information and record it. And they've promised to send me a unit as soon as that's available, and that should be in a few months. And I do plan to make a video once I have that unit. Quite honestly, unless it does data logging, and I can look at the historical data, even all the way back to last year. Like what was last spring like as far as temperature goes? When can I put my plants outside? That's the kind of data gardeners need. And unless the unit can provide that, I don't think it's very useful to gardeners. Now, if you're interested in the weather and monitoring weather, I think this is a great tool. I hope you enjoyed this video. My book, Plant Science for Gardeners, just received an award from the independent publishers. It got the Silver Award for Science, and I thought you might be interested in listening to some of this book, and you can do that in this video right here. Or if you're interested in more gardening myths, have a look at this video here. Happy gardening.